How can I help you to be the person that you can become in the business for yourself and for the business?
Have you ever wondered what it takes to coach the world's greatest performers to win? Well, today's guest is the legendary Frank Dick, a globally renowned coach, mentor, and expert in the psychology of winning.
You create limits, the huge potential physically, mentally, and emotionally in each one of us. How can we possibly start talking about limits?
For over 5.5 decades, Frank has served as the guiding force behind champions like Daley Thompson, Boris Becker, Sir Alex Ferguson.
You've had a fair share of failures and successes. Which one's easier to handle?
They're both tough.
Wait. They're both tough. Success is tough. What do you mean?
This isn't just a podcast, it's a masterclass in becoming who you're truly capable of being. Let's do this.
Well, listen, James, the most important person you must believe in life is you. If you don't believe in you, how do you expect anybody else to?
ActionCOACH, the help you need to grow your business.
Frank Dick, what a pleasure, what a privilege. Folks, I need to announce this, that we are in the company of greatness. 5.5 decades of experience of coaching at the highest level in sport. That's 55 years, Frank. And you're still at the helm. You're chair of various different committees moving forward for coaching. And wow, what have you learned about coaching over that period?
You never stop learning, that's the whole bit. And I think I know we've had these conversations before, and we talk about being mountain people and valley people. But if you're going to be a real mountain person, you keep looking for mountains that other people haven't dared to climb. And you go for these, and there's always another one. There's always another one.
You get me straight away. If you're going to be a mountain person, then keep looking for the mountains that no one else has climbed.
That's it.
I suppose they're endless, aren't they?
Yeah,
if you look for it, will you find it?
Yeah, there's always something you can do better. There's always something you can do differently. And in the world we're in now, because things change so fast, it's not just enough to look at how can I be better at doing what I'm doing. Is there something else out there that I've not thought about before? And you and I have spoken about this, that being focused is not the same thing as being blinkered. Right? You can be focused in on what you're doing now, but do you have the ability to scan back and keep your peripheral vision strong? Because there may be things happening out there that will truly affect your future. There'll be some things that won't, so you can ignore these. And maybe in the skills that we have in life, being a good observer, having strong observation skills, we've always agreed is fundamental. It's absolutely fundamental. But the next part of that, we've spoken before about the thing that the United States fighter pilots use, the OODA loop. OODA standing for observe, orientate, decide, and act. Orientate, probably you and I would say, finding a meaning, what's the context? And that skill is just as important as the observation skills. When you see things, what are you seeing? What does it mean?
So let's create a fake context here. I'm a business owner or a business leader or a manager listening right now. You've got a particular challenge going on in your world, a particular situation unfolding second by second. What Frank is saying here is step back, observe what's going on. Is that the first part of it, to be able to I can't see the wood for the trees type thing? Stepping back, you can start to see what's in front of you.
Yeah. Let me give you a very harsh and cruel example. Nokia, at one point, any self-respecting person was going to have a Nokia phone. It was one of the biggest brands in the world.
Any self-respecting person.
And then there was this terrible situation a couple of years ago, and the hair still stands up in my arm talking about this, where the chief executive, winding up the company, said, "We did nothing wrong, but somehow we lost." Wow. We so focused on what we were doing that life was changing, and for them it was. Samsung and Apple had worked out that touch screens were going to be the future, and Nokia didn't address that fast enough. And the next thing, they're out the game. And so our ability to have this capacity, and I think regularly, James, is to be able to step back, what's going on out there? Because in the world we're in now, it's changing faster and faster than ever before. I don't know if you and I have ever spoken about the book Future Shock, and it was written by a guy called Alvin Toffler. And this book was maybe the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s. But the second chapter, he said, the world today is as different from the world into which my father was born as that world was from Julius Caesar's. So it's not slowing down, James. It's going to get faster and faster. And our capacity to be curious, to be observant, and to find meaning in what we're seeing out there, that's so critical as we move forward, whether you're in business, sport, or the military.
Yeah, a bit of a blinding flash of the obvious there as you were sharing that point, because I gave this scenario, it's what's going on, step back, how can we fix it? But then you've taken it a level up. Actually, not what's going on with this situation. What's going on in the industry? Let's have a look way beyond this. What's the future of the industry look like? Maybe we've got to all pay attention to that, which beyond our own problems.
Yeah.
Okay, so observe first. Orientate is just gathering yourself. Is it finding a comfort? Or what is it to orientate yourself in a tricky situation?
Is to find the meaning. What's the relevance of this? We're in an extraordinary situation now where once upon a time we used to say we never had enough information. Now it's a tsunami.
But it's the opposite, isn't
Yeah,
it?
absolutely too much. And at one point, I think I was getting it wrong. In fact, I know I was getting it wrong. I said there has to be more quality control for what young people are picking up from social media and so on. But actually, a friend of mine, Eddie Jones, we know Eddie Jones, he said, now, Frank, it's about making sure that those people we're developing for the future are critical thinkers. They've got to have the capacity to be a critical thinker, to be able to differentiate themselves. Because we as leaders or whatever, we can't be with them all the time. So that's a set of skills that they have to have.
Well, I wonder, how do you know if someone's a critical thinker? And how do you develop it?
There's the crunch, because part of, as we try to develop people, and I don't want to jump ship here, but I think it's relevant, this business of cognitive bias in life, right? People trust us to give them the truth and to give them clarity and transparency, but we're all victims of our own cognitive bias. And sometimes, one of them, I can't remember what you call it, you'll correct me straight away, it's you only look at the things that agree with what you believe, right?
Yeah.
You don't step out and try to get all the different things.
Cognitive dissonance.
Some people will they'll almost dismiss an opinion that happens to be different or contradict theirs because they want their own opinion to be reinforced. And if we're not careful, we are seriously guilty of not being critical thinkers ourselves at that point.
Because on a subconscious level, the self-protective instincts that will help, you will go and find evidence for what you believe.
Yeah.
And guess what, folks? What you look for, you will find.
Yeah.
So actually, that's a really good learning point for me. If you want to become a critical thinker, look for something else. Be aware of the biases that you've got and ask another question to force you out of that sort of natural magnetism towards the stuff that you already believe.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you just taking it to same sort of area, how often do you go into meetings and you have people sitting around the table believing that there's a right and a wrong opinion? You can't go in thinking that way. This is part of being a critical thinker. You can only go in thinking there will be different opinions here today. Right? There will be different ones, and some you will want to linger a little bit longer in. Others you can find good reason for not agreeing with it and moving on to something else. But with all this mixture of opinions around the table, out of that there will be cherries from each one of them that we may come out with a completely different opinion than anybody had around the table at the end of it. But we as critical thinkers, as leaders at that point, we've got to be able to find our way through that and encourage the difference.
I suppose the two important things there is, number one, the mindset, acknowledging there'll be different opinions rather than going in with, we're going to find a right and a wrong. And number two is be open-minded. Where we're going to go, we don't know yet. That's going to come out of the process of critiquing and thinking together, yeah?
Yeah, and I think some people will go into a meeting and at the back of their mind, it's my job today to persuade these people that I'm right. Whereas there's another dimension to that. What if we allow them to persuade us that there's an opinion that is different from ours? It may even contradict ours, but it has to be listened to, because how many times have you said to me over the years, James, the most important observation skill you have is listening. Can we get actively listening to what's happening around the table? And maybe because people want to get a conclusion quickly in life, the conclusion being, I'm right and this is what we're going to do, we don't take that little bit, because that's, again, it's part of stepping back, isn't it?
Look, there are a few skills in life that are indispensable that you never actually stop developing. And listening is part of communication, and communication is, my belief right now, an indispensable life skill. Whether that changes in the future, maybe good people like you could convince me otherwise. Let's wait and see. But right now, yeah, listening is big on there.
Absolutely. And
primarily because people want to feel understood.
Yeah.
People need to feel understood. In fact, psychologist Dr. Martin Newman, he said, at any given moment, everyone on the planet has two unmet needs. One is the need to feel understood, and two is the need to be admired.
Yeah, good. The admired one, I relate to, is it William James? The greatest craving of human nature is the need to be appreciated.
Yeah, it's the admiration, appreciation, recognition, kind of under a similar umbrella, aren't there? That is a skill in life as well, actually. To admire people in an appropriate way, not in a sleazy way or an inappropriate way, in a genuine, heartfelt manner. That is a serious skill.
Well, the game I play all the time when I meet our persons on ActionCOACH webinars, things that we do together, I'll say to, or even when we meet, how you doing, superstar?
You do, yeah, champ.
Yeah.
So, honestly,
just little bits like that, and it changes.
You do not know the waves, the ripple effects of the splashes that you make, because obviously you, behind the scenes, you're influencing a lot of people, a lot of coaches. And I turned up with a coach that shall remain unnamed, and their son jumped out of the car. And this coach said to the son, "Come on, champ." And then the coach says, "I got that from Frank Dick."
No.
Yet since that day, years back, that's what, I mean, my son Elliot thinks his nickname is Champ. All our kids have got a nickname. I need to come up with a better one for the girls, though, because Emily's called Noodles.
Okay.
That's her nickname. Yeah. And Olivia's called Treasure Chest. I'll wait for your next pearls of wisdom on that one.
How much does that cost in terms of time or just a little piece, and that changes the ambience straight away? Even if somebody's had a crap day at the moment, say, "How are you doing, superstar?"
True to your word. How many years or decades, dare I say, have you been doing that? Who did you learn it from as well?
Actually, I picked the idea of champ from an American coach. Certainly Fred Wilt said that. He was a former FBI agent who went into coaching. He wrote loads of books. You must have read Fred Wilt stuff and so on. He was the first, and that was a good 40 years ago. Yeah.
So for 40 years you've been doing this stuff?
Yeah. Because it's simple. The other interesting thing is, what's in a word when somebody says to you, I can't remember the exact occasion when this happened. I can remember in terms of time, but I remember the athlete when he turned around to me and said, "Hi, coach." And I've got no explanation for it, James, but that made me feel pretty cool. I don't know why. He could have called me a whole bunch of things. "Thanks, coach," or "Hi, coach."
When was that? When was the first time someone said that to you?
Well, that would be back around about 1980. Yeah, 80 to 84.
Thanks, coach.
Yeah.
Thanks, coach. It give you a sense of pride and a sense of identity?
It was as if he was giving me a position of respect. I say I can't explain it totally, but that very When somebody says that, I think, yeah,
That might be a golden moment here, actually, an unsaid word. For the listeners, business leaders and owners, to find a way of creating that feeling of pride, respect, and identity. You just say one thing to them, to the people around you, and when you get that, they feel what you felt. When you get it right. That's a challenge for us all, isn't it?
Absolutely. And this comes back to something else I'm pretty sure we discussed before. The most fundamental thing, if you're leading people, or if you're managing people, or if you're a coach, or even if you're a parent, make time to know your people. Because if you don't know them, you won't get the language right. And if you can't get the language right, we won't get communication and all sorts of other things. And I think that's really important, to take time. And because sometimes a word will mean something absolutely different to two different people. So, for example, I remember an occasion ages ago, I was working with a team, and we had this thing called a hot debrief immediately afterwards. And it was a freezing cold day. It was a very serious misnomer. The snow's coming in sideways. And one coach, we got this huddle, and one coach said, I was speaking to, let's call him James. I was speaking to James across there. And I said to him, you've got to be braver. You've got to have more courage out there. And the second coach turned to me and said, I wouldn't like anybody saying that to me. I said, well, what's that? He said, I think you were calling me a coward. I said, wow, where did that come from? But if you don't know your people, you won't get your words right. And if you don't get your words right, you're in trouble.
And that takes time. Does that take time in an informal setting or a formal setting?
Informal. I feel really strongly about that. Whether you're the boss in a business or whatever, to make a little memo to yourself to make sure that those people that you've got your serious reports or the most immediate contacts, make sure you take time, maybe over a 6-week cycle or whatever, to have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, or just let's go for a walk for 10 minutes and see over lunchtime and get to know each other again. And somebody was saying just the other day that when we were doing this program on how to manage success or failure, it was Lisa Alexander, the chief coach for netball in Australia, when they won the World Cup. She said, it's not just important for the coach to know the athlete. The athlete's got to know the coach, because otherwise it's all one way. And there's a relationship that has to be fostered here.
Same for a manager, same for a leader. Now, interesting this, because coaching is definitely part of management. Let's just navigate a grey space for a second. We're not talking about 3 different things here. Management is definitely linked to leadership, and coaching is definitely part of both, because coaching is part of leadership as well. Has that changed in recent years, and how do you think it's going to change moving forward?
Really good point. Yeah, yes, I think that there's certain fundamentals that don't change about developing, fostering relationships and so on. But bearing in mind that formerly, when you were addressing a team, a lot of coaches would get the team lined up and bang, as if this speech is going to motivate everybody equally. But they're all different. They all come from different backgrounds. And that's changing all the time. I know we quote, even older than me, by the way, Heraclitus' quote was, no man ever crosses the same river twice, because the river's never the same, nor is the man.
Oh, it's powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, because the world's changing, our individual worlds are changing, and the world round about that is changing. And if we don't see each other have a conversation for a month or whatever, a real conversation, we've missed the fact that our worlds have gone in slightly different directions than they were, say, a month ago. And can we understand that? When we were speaking the other day about success and failure, I was trying to make the point, please understand this, it's not just about how we manage success and failure with the people we're working with in our arena. Outside there can be successes and failures. And that can be impacting, I know this is big in the world of Action Coach, that can have serious impact on how effective we're going to be in this relationship of how can I help you to be the person that you can become in the business for yourself and for the business.
Your book deserves to be published, and selfpublishing.com wants to help make it happen. You'll work one-to-one with an author strategist to write, publish, and market your book the right way. With more than 8,000 authors and 100,000 books in print, they know what works. Ready to bring your story to life? Visit selfpublishing.com/ActionCOACH right now.
Look, I really want the listeners, whether they're an owner, a manager, a leader, just to learn a little bit from you about coaching here. So you're 55 years of one of the highest performance coaches on the planet yourself, but you've worked with a lot of the world's best coaches as well. Now, what is it that some of the best ones do differently as coaches?
Really, you could sum it up really very quickly. A lot of people get the picture of the coach as the skills architect, building the training program, the technical side and so on. But the truth is, there's another part of your business that I have to say, in coach education programs, for the most part, is neglected, and that is the people business. There's a technical business and there's a people business. And I really don't care how much you know about the technical business. If you don't have to understand the people stuff, it's really not going to work. And these coaches that become great coaches may not actually be the best technical experts in the world, but they understand people, the individuals they're working with, and they understand how to deal with this or that little crisis out there, or how to get the best out of them. And these coaches understand this above all else. You can't put greatness into people. That's what coaches do. It's our job to get the greatness out of them, because the greatness is already there, at whatever level they live. Whether they're going for an Olympic gold medal or whether they're simply trying to get in the first team for the first time, right? You cannot put the greatness in. You have to pull the greatness out. And these coaches are the masters.
Really, like, instantly thinking of football for some reason, because it's so prevalent in the UK. You see the head coach, the manager, if you like, as they're called, but they're really the head coach. And then you see them, they might have 5, 6 other technical specialist coaches on the team. So before you know it, there's 7 or 8 coaches coaching a team.
Yeah. So you then have to be a leader of leaders, right? You've got a leadership team. And what you've very succinctly put there is there are only 3 things that you need to know in life if you're going to lead people, coach, manage, be a parent, so on. You've got to know what you don't know, and know somebody who does, and bring them to the party.
And then you're all right.
Absolutely, you're going to be all right. Because none of us knows everything. I think I'm a pretty smart cookie by this time. I've lived long enough, if you like. But I know there are things that I don't know, that other people know better than me. And every now and again, I get the privilege of being invited into a different sport, a sport I've know nothing about, really. I do understand the people stuff, but I don't understand these technical bits. And ultimately, if you think about it, the qualities you need if you're going to be the leader, the manager, or whatever, you don't necessarily have to be an expert at all aspects of that business. But you better be expert at understanding where you're short and understanding who the people are that you have to build in.
Know what you know what you don't know, and know someone who does. I like this, what you said here, just in summary of the 2 points. The best coaches, they know how to get the best out of other people, the greatest out of other people. That's what, number 1, they know that. Number 2, they become this leader of leaders. Is there a number 3 that the best coaches do?
I think that kind of sums it up. I tell you what, you caught me reading a book today that I just managed to
check out the title of this, folks.
I think this is a great title.
The Habit of Excellence. And this is from the Army.
Yeah. And just give you this quick quote of it. This book will explore questions that are fundamental to leadership in any area of life. And this, to me, sums up the whole thing very quickly. How to build trust and cohesion, achieve a balance between control and delegation, and deliver results in the face of adversity. Beautifully simple, eh?
You're a good salesperson as well, aren't you? You're a good salesperson.
A lot of people say to me, why do you listen to what the military say? Because what's that got to do with modern life and so on? If you think about the world that they're in, when the soldiers come in to serve their country, they may have to bring chaos and finish somebody else's life, and they're willing to go out there and give their lives. And the leadership that goes around that kind of environment, I think it's pretty important to understand, because such people serve us pretty well.
When I got a big lesson recently from, I've heard this many times, but it just impacted me slightly different this time. One of our coaches, Steve Gaskell, big military man,
yeah,
and he's seen it all, he's experienced it all, but he said it a few times, this time particularly resonated. And it's so appropriate in business as well. When two people are in charge, people die.
Yep. Yep.
He says you can't share the responsibility lines. People have got to be responsible for different things, but if someone's in charge, they are in charge. Probably the same goes in business. Two people responsible for the marketing, and
yeah,
no one's responsible.
I think that's one of the reasons why I love working with you and the team, is that you've actually got quite a mixture of inputs from quite different walks of life. And if I can turn that the other way around, and you were asking about these qualities of super coaches, if you like, there's something else in all of them. There's this acceptance that you don't know everything. That kind of relates to the what do you know what you know stuff. They're quite capable of stepping right outside their world to find more about life. For example, one of the guys that I brought in to speak to coaches in a group that I'm working with at the moment is a guy called Boris Verkovsky. Now, there's no reason why you should know Boris, but Boris was the head coach for the Cirque du Soleil. Now, I brought him in to help influence coaches. In fact, where we are right now at Pennyhill Park, he was here speaking to Eddie Jones coaches, brought him in for that. Why? Because this is entertainment. This is circus, for goodness sake. What's that got to do with running a rugby team or building a business? It's just a different perspective on coaching. We've got somebody here who not only helps people develop movement, but he actually creates movement in the first place. Anybody who goes to see Cirque du Soleil must think, how on earth did they do that? People like Boris have got this ability to seek a greater sense of movement potential where other people would see a limit. And that is a lesson in itself in life is pretty important. Any limit out there is a figment of your imagination, right? You create limits. There aren't any limits. If you think about the huge potential physically, mentally, and emotionally in each one of us, how can we possibly start talking about limits?
You've made me reflect there on something that you said earlier on about the OODA loop, the observe and orientate. Look, the Cirque du Soleil head coach comes in, shares some things. And I'm just putting myself in the scenario of these other rugby coaches learning. The challenge is, let's observe what they're saying. And the orientate bit goes to, let's find the relevance in all of this. And there's an art to this. Mm-hmm. We dismiss what we don't know, but we choose, there's something there. Mm-hmm. And then we magnify that, because I don't know whether this is an adage or quotes. If you try and do everything, you'll be average. And if you go for one or two things, you can become world class. But you've just got to choose the bit and dismiss the rest. The relevance.
This is great, because we can almost go back to the earlier part of the discussion where we're talking about focus and blinkers, right? Because once you have this ability to scan, you'd better be able not to have that cognitive bias that thinks, we're doing okay because I agree with that across there. Yeah. But what about the bits that are not quite in alignment? Somebody once asked me about what's the key to making a decision? And I've always thought of decisions like a photograph. If it's out of focus, don't go there. There's something in there that, as you said yourself, there's something there that you feel, right, that's not quite right. Think about your decision again before you go any further.
We're talking about informed decision making. You've probably hit a nerve there for a lot of the listeners. It's really important to make decisions. We're making decisions every day. And some decisions are bigger than others. So if the picture's not focused, don't make the decision yet.
Yeah.
Because it's not clear. So what you're saying there is get some clarity, find the moving parts.
Yeah.
Analyze it.
And where are the trickiest bits in all of that? If it's data-based, decisions are normally relatively straightforward, bearing in mind that the data doesn't make the decision, you do. Always keep that in your mind. But what about the other end of things where you might have a moral conflict? It's not clear. You're the boss and you bring me in, you say, Frank, I have to, you're head of HR, Frank, and I have to tell you, it's absolutely confidential, you must not tell anybody this. We're going to have to chop 30% of the workforce, and it's going to come from this category and this category. And I'm sitting here thinking, there's a lady out there who's a single parent, she's just invested, going to buy a house, and all of her savings is going to go into that, and she's on the list, she's going to be getting the sack. What do I do about it? Frank, you can't do anything about it because I've told you can't do it. But I've got a moral dilemma here. I thought, she's my friend. I really can't let her down. And there's a fantastic little book, and I'm pretty sure you've read it, Ethicability. I can't remember the author. But that was about making right choices in these situations. And he gave a really interesting little acronym to help you, give you a guideline in such moments. It's called making the right choices, R-I-G-H-T. R, are there rules that apply in this choice? I, integrity. Does this meet your standards of integrity and so on? G, this decision, who will benefit from it? What's good? H, harm, who will be damaged by this? And T, is it truthful and honest? And I think it's a super little, a lot of people don't like looking at philosophy things about ethics and logic and so on, but it's such a simple little book.
Especially for someone with a strong moral compass that's driven, because it's one of the core three. Your morals and values, your moral compass is one of the core three drivers of human motive. Motivation is your motive to take action. Some kind of Latin word specialist came up with that one a long time ago. So your values and morals, that's a reason to do something. I'm going to do this because it's the right thing to do. Yep. So actually, if you look at that, what are the rules? How does this sit with me on an integrity basis? What's good about this? Who's it going to harm? And what was the last one about truthful?
Truth. Is it honest?
Is it honest? Yeah, for someone who's driven but with a strong sense of moral compass, that is a really good framework. But they've probably already got that framework. For the ones that aren't driven by that, that could be good. By the way, the other two big drivers are your vision and purpose. I'm going to do it because I want it. That's desire. Yeah. And the last one is your personal conviction, which is, I'm going to do this because I said I would.
Yes, okay.
It's that determination and the personal conviction inside. They're the massive internal drivers of motive. Okay, so look, you've had a fair share of failures and successes. Which one's easier to handle?
They're both tough. I remember...
Wait. They're both tough. Success is tough. What do you mean?
I think that Alex Ferguson said to me at one point, you've got to be careful with success. It can seduce you and it can derail progress. In other words, for a lot of people, if it's working, hey, let's stick with this and just make it better and so on. And you don't get this vision, other things that we can do differently. And you can become complacent. And if you're always winning and winning and winning, if someday, bang, this comes down, you're at a serious loss. In other words, at some point, you better be able to let your people, the people you're developing, experience failure, because it's not going to work. Life was not going to work for you all the time. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but shit happens out there, and you better be prepared. When that happens, what are you going to do about it? And if you've not experienced the crunch of that and feeling yourself in this failure, you'll really not learn what to do about it. So the success thing, it's important to understand, first of all, why you're successful. And I know it's one of my stupid throwaway lines. If you don't know why you're winning, it's an accident. Right? You better be as forensic in analysis and in debriefing and review when things are going really well as you are when they're not going so well. Most of us intuitively go in that direction. Definitely, if things are going wrong, we better do something about it.
Back in 2009, I went out to China for about a month to study Chinese coaching philosophy and working out what they were doing good and what's good about that, etc., etc. And one of these Chinese coaches, Yvette, she said, actually, you've got to understand pressure, because when you're successful, pressure's different. Because what happens now is you're expected to win. So you feel the pressure when you're expected to win. Alex Ferguson's talking to you, it can derail success. The expectations are really high. And she talked about a young athlete or someone young in the career that's ambitious and someone that's already a CEO, if you like. She says the CEO feels the pressure because they're expected to perform, but the young person feels the same. It's a different type of pressure, but they feel pressure because they want it so much.
Yeah, and I think related to this is who's giving you the pressure, right? Your perception of success and failure is one thing, but there are people out there, there could be the media, could be the press, could be the spectators, could be the board of directors. They've got their perception, and they may not understand the process of development and the journey that you as the coach are trying to take them on. I always remember years ago I had a disastrous Commonwealth Games. It was seriously bad. I've still got a scar on that one, believe me. And I came home, and I'm a Rangers fan, right? And I was very surprised to get a call at home. Frank, this is Jock Stein here, who was the manager of Celtic. He said, how about having lunch with me tomorrow, son? And which I took more as an instruction than an invitation. But I went through and we're walking down, I think it was Buchanan Street or Renfield Street. And as we're walking down, he said, your head's still down. I said, yeah, these guys have done me a good number, Jocks. Not good seeing yourself in the papers there. And he said, how many people do you think there are between us and the traffic lights ahead? I said, 100? He says, at least 99 of them know more about football than me, or think they know more about football than me. But they're not accountable for their opinions. I'm accountable for mine. Never forget that, son. And that stuck with me forever. Because you will get all that over a pint of beer in the pub and so on. You get all this stuff coming back at you. Eddie Jones, dismiss it. Keep it away. You should listen to the criticisms and the critiques from those people you trust. Right? Don't get bogged down in all of that stuff. And I think that when it comes back to success and failure, we've got to remember that. We have our own standards in life, James, you and I, right? We know what success feels like.
I interviewed an 8-time world champion kickboxer, Liam Harrison, from Manchester. And he's got a huge following online, actually, millions of people. And every day, several times a day, people are saying really bad things about him and criticising him for this and whatever else. He comes with it. And I said to him, how do you handle the critics? And he said something amazing. He said, it's really easy. The fire never comes from above, James. He says the fire always comes from underneath.
Good.
And it's all right. And you made me think of him when you said, get the criticism from people that you trust, or the feedback, or whatever you want to call it. Dismiss the people that you...
Link to that, when it comes to the failure side, we had this little webinar session with a group the other day there, and Eddie Jones was speaking about success or failure. And Eddie's great. He's really open about things. He doesn't hide away from the shocks of his life and so on. And he was talking about the misfortune of what happened with Australia in the last World Cup and getting a touch away from what happened when we got to the final in Japan. And the way he describes it as, he knows what failure is to him. He's not interested in what failure feels to other people. What does it feel to him? And he says it leaves a scar at the back of your head. And I thought, that's pretty good, because just as I've said, I can still remember that Commonwealth Games.
The scar's there, it'll never go.
Absolutely. And so you have to be careful of it, because it can come back and haunt you every now and again. Could that happen again? That kind of stuff. You remember how horrible that felt. And Laura Muley who is the coach to Femke Ball. I don't know if you remember Femke Ball. She went to the World Championships, remember?
Yeah,
tripped up, came back a few days later, gets a gold medal and another gold medal afterwards. And what Laurent says that Femke still recalls that from time to time when things are not going quite the way they should. So we as coaches, for our own, but for other people's failures, we've got to be on top of that too. To understand that it can creep back in again, and we've got to protect and move on. And get into the, listen, how often have we failed in life? Measure that against, I must tell you the story with my two girls, my daughters Erin and Cara. When they were tiny and things were going wrong, they would come home and, oh, this happened, Dad, that happened, Dad. I said, look, I'll give you a piece of advice. Take a piece of A4, write it down, and split it down the middle. On the left-hand side, I want you to write down the things that didn't work today. On the right-hand side, I want you to write down the things that did. Right? I said, I promise you, in life, you'll always have more on the right side than on the left side. And just bear that in mind. You've won every day at the end of the day.
That's probably a good exercise for the listeners to actually do. You know, what didn't work today and what did?
Yeah.
I promise you, Frank promises you, you're going to have more on the right side than the left. As long as you give it attention. Because it's obvious, isn't it? This is the trap that we've got. It's too obvious to see what didn't work and feel what didn't work and get consumed with what didn't work and be upset and depressed and morbid about what didn't work. The life will do that to you.
Yep.
It's like being in a little boat in a choppy ocean.
And related to that is another piece of advice. Every now and again, somebody will ask me if I'll have a cup of coffee with them in London because they're either going for promotion or they're leaving and going to do something else. And it's another written down exercise. And I said, when I left track and field, you have no idea how many people got in touch with me and said, Frank, how can you do that? This is who you are. In international athletics, most people at the top end are going to know who you are. I said, look, hold on a second. I hope nobody's going to write that in my tombstone. This is all that Frank Dick was. I'd like to think it was more than that. And it made me go home and take another piece of A4, the 31 lines, if I can remember correctly, on this particular page. And I started at the top. And on each line, I had to write something that I loved doing, but it also had to be something I believed I was good at, and it might make money, right? And this is the advice I give to these people who take me for a cup of coffee. I said, I promise you, you'll get to the bottom of the page. In your case, James, you could write a whole book. For me, I got to the bottom of the page, but to date, I've never got past the 5th line, right? Because when you take time to really look at who you are and what you've done and what you're capable of doing, you'll get a shock. Because if you're not careful in life, you can be so grooved into the job that you're doing that if anything goes wrong, you're looking for the same job somewhere else. But I say to people, look at it and understand just how much you've got going for yourself, who you are, what you can achieve, what you're happy with, what you can... And when it comes to moving your jobs and whatever, look at that and move before you're ready.
Why do you say move before you're ready?
Believe in yourself enough that you're going to grow into it.
Starting your own business was an exciting time, wasn't it? The good days you had and the bad. You knew you'd have to work hard, but you did it for your future. Lately, though, you're missing out on the important things in life. Time seems to be slipping by. So make the change. Claim back your work-life balance and grow your business today. Visit actioncoach.co.uk.
Right? In my experience, if you're worth anything in life, if you've got confidence in yourself and you believe in who you are, you will make it work. It comes back to the idea of decision making, James. I don't believe we ever make wrong decisions. We come to a crossroads, we make a decision, you make it right. If you've done it, if that's your decision, make it work for you. Right? I remember when I got the Scottish job, the Scottish national coach. I'd come back from the States. I'd been studying with Bill Bowerman at the University of Oregon. Or just a little aside there, Bill Bowerman and Phil Knight were the guys who created Nike.
pretty cool, isn't it?
So I was working with him as a coach, and that's what I was looking at.
Let's just appreciate that for a second. Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, you were working with his partner.
Yeah.
Phil Knight has got an incredible leadership philosophy as well, by the way.
But Bill was such a fantastic coach. I loved that. I worshipped everything he came out of his mouth. I thought was fantastic. So when I came back I was offered the Scottish job, and I can confess this now because I'm far enough away from it. I didn't have a coaching qualification. I'd studied it. I'd read and done probably more than an awful lot of people had done in coaching, studying what was happening in East Europe and what was happening in the States and so on. Put all of this stuff together. But I didn't have a qualification. And
that's how it was.
Yeah. And my boss, the guy who applied for the job, was persuaded to do that. The guy who said, "We've decided that you're the person that we want, Frank." I said, "But you'll have to get a coaching qualification, and we'll wait for as long as it takes." So I thought, that's nice to have people believing you that much. And so I did that, studied, I got the coaching qualification and so on. About 2 years later, a guy called Jimmy Campbell, who was understand this, James, I was coming in as a young person to be the national coach, and there were coaches who I was their boss, if you like, but they'd coached Olympic athletes, and I hadn't. I was nowhere near that. And this comes back to something we said a bit earlier. Do you need to know everything? The truth is, you need to be able to lead. That's it. That's your primary competency that you need if you're going to be a leader, and bring in the other people. Anyway, Jimmy Campbell, again, Olympic coach, after 2 years, he walked up to me and says, "Listen, son, I wasn't sure about you when you came in, but you've grown into the job. Well done." And I thought, that's how everybody should think, that they will grow into their job. And that means sometimes don't wait for everything to be right. Believe in yourself enough that the bits that are not quite right yet, you will make right. Because you've got that commitment. That's one of your 3 criteria that you gave me about going out there. That last one, that commitment, right? I want this. I'm going to get there.
Said, I'm going to do this. I'm going for it. That's a powerful statement, isn't it? That's how everybody should think. I will grow into the role. And
listen, James, the most important person you must believe in life is you. If you don't believe in you, how do you expect anybody else to? So that's where it starts. You've almost got to radiate, not an arrogance. There's an old Scottish expression, you've got to have a good conceit of yourself. It's a self-belief. It's not an arrogance. You're not standing in front of people telling everybody just how good you are. You've got to radiate this piece of self-belief, because that will bring people towards you.
You mentioned Alex Ferguson earlier on about the lesson on derailing progress. You've got to be careful with success. What was it like working with Alex Ferguson?
Alex is, I don't know if you ever had a chance to interview him. I hope you do at some point. He has got such depth of, for want of a better expression, wisdom of people. At a time when, he was getting older in the job, and you could excuse him for not being able to keep pace of what was happening out there. But he made sure that at Old Trafford, his room looked out into the car park where the players were coming in. And when players were coming in, if they're coming out of the car on the phone and so on, he's watching the faces as they were coming in, and he'd know if somebody had a problem and things were not quite right. Because whatever happens when you come in, you better be ready to go out there and train and give it 100% concentration. And if you've got worries out there, how are you going to be concentrating out here? But he had that level of wisdom to knowing who's coming in today, who's that person out there. And I'll have to take care of that person to make sure that they can deliver when they go out for the team.
There's plenty of gold in that story, isn't there? But you're obvious self-looking when people come in to start with, and observing and reading between the lines. But the second bit is the bit that a lot of the listeners might know, because they might think he's cutthroat, he's strong, he's disciplined, authoritarian. They might think any of that, but what you said was, I'm going to have to help that player today. Yeah, he's going to need my arm around his shoulders today. That's my management skills.
Yeah, there are times when you've got to have a hard edge, James. You know that. But there are also times when you better be, I don't know what you want to call it, emotional intelligence or empathy or whatever. You've got to have that in your nature as well. Because what's the point of driving that hard edge through when the other person is actually really not ready for that?
But the hard edge, my experience of coaches, managers, leaders, that's the harder one to get. Some people have got it, but that's the harder one to get. The courage to be disliked, the courage to hold someone accountable, the courage to tell the truth, the courage to say, it's not good enough, come on, let's meet. And confront the challenge. A lot of people find that difficult.
Absolutely. Do you remember, I don't know if you remember the name Betty Calloway, she coached Torval and Dean. And she was a lovely lady. If you'd met her, you'd think you're meeting Miss Marples, right? She's a lovely lady. And I remember she said to me, you've got to be able to push a little. And I think that's sometimes a coach has got to remember that sometimes the athlete doesn't believe they can go any further. And you've got to be able, not cruelly, not brutally, you've got to be able to push them over that edge. Because again, and provided you're doing that sensitively, that hard move, they begin to believe more and more in their ability to go further. Because to me, that's the magic moment in coaching when the athlete actually owns the whole thing. And you end up from, and I know we've played with this before, I love this idea, the 4 stages of coaching. You start off being the light because the athlete doesn't know where they're going. Then you give them the light so that they can see where they're going. Then you're the mirror that reflects their light. But finally, you've got to be able to step out of the light.
When you say, it's really powerful, that analogy, isn't it? Stepping out of the light. And when you said the earlier point of getting them to take ownership, remember it's a great book, Coaching for Performance, John Whitmore. One of the lines in there is, it says this, the performance is exclusively in the hands of the performer.
Absolutely.
Remember that if you're a coach. Remember that if you're a manager. Remember that if you're a leader.
100%. Results are things over which you do not have total control. The only thing you have total control over is your performance. And as Bill Walsh said, take care of performance and the result takes care of itself.
Got a few quick questions for you, Frank. 55 years, coaching at the highest level. What's been the hardest lesson to learn?
I think one of the things I had to learn very early on was I'm a passionate person and I can let my emotions go absolutely out of control. And the most important lesson was to keep your emotions in a central corridor, right? Where you don't go over the moon and you don't go to the depth of depression. Because your athletes and those people you're developing, even your children, if you're a parent, they are looking to you for emotional stability, right? You are the thing that they hold on to when things are not going right. If you think of the tsunami of change that's happening about us at the moment, and if you think of the whole nature of a tsunami, what are you going to hold on to? Still will be there after the storm's over. Right? And we as coaches, as parents, as leaders, as managers, as any kind of developer of people, we have got to be in control of that, to control that central corridor.
Beautiful. What's the most beautiful thing in the world?
The most beautiful moment, maybe?
Yeah.
Well, you'll know this as well as I do. It's when you're standing there and your wife has produced a child. There's a magic moment in that. Even now I can almost fill up thinking about it. Because it doesn't feel like, there's not another moment in your life that ever feels like that. That between you and your partner, you have created hope. You've created the world. This is the future in your hands, this tiny little thing. And you've got the job of helping them make sure they get through this vulnerable early stage to taking control and moving on themselves. And that's just as emotional, by the way, when you say goodbye at the university. Yeah.
Tell us that story.
Oh, my next door neighbour, funny this, just an aside, Frank and Linda Dick were in one house, Barry and Linda Dicker were in the next house, right? That's true, I'm not making it up. Anyway, we knew that Barry and Linda were going to take Zoe up to Glasgow University to study veterinary science. And I came home one night and Linda asked me this question I've never ever been able to answer. She said, "You'll never guess what Linda next door said today." "You've got me, darling, I really can't guess." They were going to take Zoe up to university. Yeah. They did that yesterday. And Linda said Barry cried all the way home from Glasgow to London in the car. And I said, what a big, soft toy. And I thought this guy was a tough, macho guy. Anyway, 2 years later, I was stood in the car park at St Andrews University. And to say goodbye to Erin, my elder daughter, was going to go into university. And it must have been a grain of sand that blew itself from the beach and lodged itself in my eyes. But I felt distinctly uncomfortable. And I said to Linda and my younger daughter, Cara, "You say goodbye, I'll be in the car." And I got into the car and I was seriously distressed, James, really distressed. And I couldn't work out why. And then I started off thinking, you've not given her all that she needs because you're too busy looking after everybody else's kids and athletics and stuff. You've not been looking after her properly and giving her what she needs, because that's going to be a tough world out there in university. And that I realized it wasn't that I hadn't prepared her. I hadn't prepared me. Because each of these stages in life, you have to take your hands off eventually and let them go. It's like the Khalil Gibran's poem, The Prophet, and the prophet's leaving the land and the people of the land are trying to, they know they'll never be able to see him again, so they're asking him questions. And one of the questions, because they're asking what's joy, what's sorrow, life, death, what of parents and their children? And to paraphrase, he said, the parent is to the bow as the child is to the arrow. It's our job as coaches, leaders, whatever, to give those we're developing direction and power, but we're supposed to let them go. And that's tough. And for some coaches out there, for sure, they still want to be depended on. But that's not what your job is. That's really not what your job is anymore. They will depend on you at one point, but the whole process is about them taking ownership. Bearing in mind, as my friend Chris Moore said years ago when he pulled me up, I used to say, you've got to give them ownership. He said, no, Frank, you can't give ownership. People take ownership. You create the process for that. I thought it was good.
You can't give ownership, people take ownership. What do you think the headline of this interview should be?
I have no idea. You're the genius at such things.
Lessons in coaching, preparing yourself for life.
The bit is, James, and I know I try to get smart with these kind of things, that somebody was chasing me the other day there about what coaches do or don't do. And I said, coaches are the architects of change. We are the architects of change. Right? The actual mechanics and so on are out there, but bearing in mind that part of being an architect is anticipating what something is going to be or going to become. And that's what we've got, that have to have that as a picture in our minds.
My favourite thing is, I love the little last two stories as well. There's danger of that being so recent and I'm feeling the emotions of it that I would choose that. Something you said slightly earlier was, if you're a coach or if you're a manager or if you're a leader, people look up to you for emotional stability. You also said it as a parent, actually. Your children look up to you for emotional stability.
Yep.
That's how important controlling your emotions is.
I know this will sound very harsh to a lot of people. Emotions control losers. Winners control emotions.
That is definitely my favourite part about the control of emotions. What's been your favourite part, Frank?
Just being, I tell you what, you've no idea how much fun it is at any point in my life sitting down with somebody like yourself who really understands the business of coaching to talk about coaching. Because I think coaching is a life passion. It's not just a transient thing or an ephemeral thing. It's with you. And that's how you live your life.
Frank, you're an incredible coach, but more importantly, you are an incredible human being. But I really want to thank you myself for everything you've done for me.
Thank you.
But it's been a real privilege, real honour. Frank Dick, thank you very much.
Thank you.